It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
Happy Aloha Friday. Thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. We are live on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. And Ryan, we are inviting a guest on this morning who always has a lot to talk about. Yeah, we're going to jump right in and head over to the fifth floor of the Hawaii State Capitol, where Governor Josh Green joins us this morning. Good morning, Governor. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's start off with the legislative session. Since we've last spoken, obviously the session has come to an end, and some analysts as well as political observers have described the final moments and the final days of the legislative session as being somewhat chaotic. There were a number of changes that were made to the budget, some funds that were added in, and there's still a lot of question marks about where things land. We also have since gotten an update on the council, the projected revenues from the council, to just project what the budget will look like and some of the changes that will have to be made. Your thoughts overall on how the session ended and some of the changes and adjustments that you may have to find yourself making.
So first, let me say I'm very appreciative of a lot of what the legislature did. They came through for us on homelessness, to a pretty significant degree on housing, about halfway there on tax breaks for those who are struggling. But there was chaos at the end, and they're the first to acknowledge it. So I'm going to have to take some actions. My team will be restricting some of the revenues that were put into the budget, some of the appropriations, for at least two reasons. One, some of it was just done before we got the Council of Revenues projection, which decreases by about $270 million that we would have. Two, we have to have a carryover surplus of at least $500 million each of the next 2 years. That's just really what you have to do based on the law. And I have to meet certain standards for our bond rating. So if we don't keep some money in place appropriately, our bond ratings go bad and then everything costs more. So there are a lot of responsible actions that I'll have to take, and I'm taking them. I'll give you some of the details right now, and then a lot more about June 16th to June 19th when we sign the budget. So let me break it down. They overshot by a significant amount of money with projects, and that is, again, partially a reflection of slightly less revenues. So $1 billion had been set aside for the rainy day fund. We already have $1 billion there, okay? They set aside another $1 billion for the rainy day fund, which is good savings in case of a natural disaster or what have you. But really what we needed is $1.5 billion in there. So I'm going to restrict $500 million. And so that will be one of the first actions I take. That gets us about halfway there. And then we will target projects that just aren't ready for prime time or that have raised concerns by people. And some of those monies will have to wait. We will describe that in the coming weeks. But like I said, I will target just a little over $1 billion to hold back. And we'll do those projects in the out years if we have the money for them.
Well, what are the nature of those projects? Are we talking large-scale construction? I mean, I know without giving everything away, what are you specifically looking at?
Well, let me first say what I'll protect. I will be protecting all housing projects. I will be protecting homeless projects and homeless services. I'll be protecting education and climate response. Those are the priorities that our administration came in with. Those are the priorities that people expressed to me over the last few years. So that will be protected. What I will be careful about is spending money on projects that haven't been fully vetted or agreed to, or that really came in the 11th hour and can't be helped. Now, there's a secondary issue, and that is that some projects and programs did not get funded that we have to fund. And I'll be doing that from the $200 million fund that was put into the budget. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to be clear with you. I'll be totally transparent about those monies. People who are saying or giving it a descriptor like it's some kind of slush fund, it's not correct. It was not a specific request. We just have to fix some of these things, okay, from me. So what I will do is I'll share right now with you the big pieces that will go into that, and we will always share this wide open in public view. We're going to have to fund what we did commit to tourism. The contracts for tourism, which I was cleaning up from the previous administration, amount to over $60 million. That's the HVCB contract. That's for basically promoting and marketing Hawaii. Then management of Hawaii is the second piece. The first piece was $38.4 million. The second was $27.1 million. And then some tourism relationships we have with Canada was $2.4 million. I feel that if we make a commitment to regenerative tourism, and we've talked about it for several years, we have to pay for it. We put those contracts out to bid. So that will come out of the monies that they put into that side fund. The next thing I'll do is I will make sure that we take care of our public school system. And I have a great respect for our superintendent, his principals, the many extraordinary schools that we have across our state. So I'm going to fund those services. I will likely put somewhere between $55 and $60 million based on the final details also from that money that was set aside. So really, I'm taking care of some things that the legislature wanted to take care of, but at the very end, they didn't, I guess, feel that they were ready to put them specifically in the budget. There are lots of ways to deal with this. Some people have suggested we come back for a special session and have them clean it up. Others say just use that money, but use it transparently, and that's what I'll do. So those are two big pieces. I will likely also support the university a little bit more, and there are some other programs that just, for whatever reason, didn't get finalized in the last hours. So that's what my team is looking at. Again, I will be completely open with you guys. We can do it on the air if you want, and I can put up a spreadsheet if you'd like to see. I don't want anyone to think that money is going to anything other than our necessary projects.
Well, we do always appreciate just the transparency and anything that you share with us on the show, obviously. But we also, there was some talk and a lot of discussion in this session about the future of HTA. A lot of that remained a question mark at the end of session, and you just kind of went through some of the money that you're allocating from that fund directly for tourism. But broadly, and looking down the line, what do you think the future of HTA looks like, knowing that, is this something where every year you're going to have to be finding out how much money you're allocating to each of these different sectors of tourism? Or do you believe that HTA still has a role and a purpose here in the state of Hawaii?
Well, that's a pretty good question. So I'm going to put new board members on the HTA board in the coming days. That will be something you'll probably be interested in focusing on. So we're finalizing that list of names. There will be some change there. There also is going to have to be a decision about the executive director. That's their prerogative, the board's prerogative, but sometimes change is needed. So that's important too. John DeFries is a very good person, but they have to make a decision about the road forward, because I think that the legislature did not have a lot of faith in the direction of the HTA. I'm simply going to fill in the contracts that we were committed to. They have enough money for operating. They'll have to use that money to operate. By the end of next session, I think we'll have our answer, whether or not there's a future for HTA or if it all is done underneath the Department of Business and Economic Development. Either road's possible, but I think that they have to produce this year, and that's why I'm being cautious and just putting those resources in somewhat carefully.
You mentioned the skepticism of some lawmakers on John DeFries' leadership. Do you have confidence in him as the director of HTA?
I have confidence that he has the right intent and he believes in the right things for Hawaii. John has been very good about the cultural component of marketing Hawaii and tourism. I do worry that John was not able to essentially win over the hearts and minds of those that have to fund the HTA. And at some point, you have to decide whether or not you're tilting at windmills. And I worry that John does not have the ability right now to get the legislature to fully fund what he would like to do. Again, he is an extremely good human being and has done a lot of good for Hawaii. But sometimes people have to change out of certain positions and move on to other careers that they can add more value to the state. I have a feeling that John will probably move on. And I think that that's what they're discussing right now at the HTA board level.
Well, another thing that you mentioned in one of your answers was the possibility of a special session. Where are you now at that, knowing that some of these adjustments have to be made? Are these things that are priorities that would require a special session? Or do you think that your administration can sort of patchwork this in the interim and wait till next session?
It looks like I've got it handled. My team is really strong. I am meeting with the Speaker and the Senate President, lots of leaders on these budget questions. But I think I can handle what needs to be done. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and come down off of the end of the legislative session. They have to sort through their priorities going forward. because we really needed more tax breaks and tax support for those who are really struggling. People have to soul search and decide that they're going to really deliver on that. We now have the next 7 months to build housing, to deal with homelessness, to address the climate change concerns we've had. I'm reluctant to have another period of conflict with the legislature. I'd rather they take a deep breath. A lot of good people are there, believe me, and I really enjoy them. But also, I want to fix some of these challenges that we just saw, and I can do it in the next 30 days. So I think we're okay.
I'm interested, and I want to get to the Kauhale conversation in just a minute. But first, given how truncated that timeline felt, the crunch time, those last 2 days, the chaos that people were describing, do you think it's appropriate for the legislature to perhaps consider going year round so that these timelines would not feel the way they did, and perhaps they would have a little bit more leisure to actually get some of this work done?
Well, that is something we've considered. I will tell you this, though. I'm concerned if you had the legislature here year round, the way there was conflict at one point or another during the legislative session with the executive branch, that would not be healthy. So until I'd see a demonstration that we will be able to work peacefully together all the time, it's not going to happen. Also, we really do have to acknowledge that you can get these jobs done. Maybe you need more time. Maybe 100 days total is not enough. And I do have the capacity to bring the team in for another 2 weeks or 4 weeks if we need. That's where we're going to start. You would need constitutional changes to make a full-time legislature. It's interesting because we have that discussion all the time regarding the city council, and they have been going year round, but they spread out their meetings. So it's something to consider. But for now, I would really like just to fix some of the challenges we've had over the last several years. And let's see that we can get to a new place. Actually, a lot of really good things have happened quite quickly. I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but we now have a commitment to get Red Hill drained. We fixed the tourism contracts. I'll fix this budget in the next 30 days. The Aloha Stadium decision has been made. I mean, these are big things that were lingering for a very long time, and we've been able to do it in 6 months. So I don't need any major changes in our government structure right now. I'd rather just get these things done.
Well, of course, you've just survived your first legislative session as governor, but one of the things that also come with that will be your first intent to veto list, some of the things that maybe you don't agree with your former or fellow lawmakers there. Is there anything in your mind that you saw that may have come through that, is granting you to look towards a potential veto, something that you have not agreed with, and something that, or any piece of legislation that you think maybe is not appropriate for what was passed this past session?
There was a bill or two that took executive authority away during emergencies. That's not acceptable. So those bills will be vetoed, but it's not that big a deal. It was about water rights, and I actually have great respect for our team at Department of Health and DLNR. It's just that during emergencies, you need the governor to take responsibility. That's just all there is to it. So I'm going to keep that power in the governor's office for myself and for whoever serves in the future. Beyond that, most of what I'm doing is line item vetoes of the budget. And frankly, a lot of legislators have come to me and asked me to veto certain things, to line item veto, because we don't have the money yet for those kind of projects. So like I said, I'll do a comprehensive list, an overview of the things I'm going to line item veto. Again, we can do it live, be fine. But I want to make sure that we really check with everyone, and we check and then double check and triple check that we're pausing on the right projects. Remember, there are a few big things we have to do. We have to build housing. They put good housing money in. We have to deal with homelessness. That money's there too. But we also have some other big projects that are out there. The stadium is a big one. And frankly, I'm going to have to address the jail at some point. And the prison services that we have are outdated. We have to be more humane. We have to provide more safety and security for our law enforcement personnel, public safety guys. We're going to have to get there on that project. And so I'm a little reluctant to start other large projects until we've dealt with what's fundamental to society here.
I want to ask you about the homelessness piece. We have been lucky enough to speak with members of your cabinet about the Kauhale concept and where we could potentially see these sites. Where are you at? I know that we have the medical Kauhale. Okay, let's go to, he brings props. We always like a prop. Tell us about the YIMBY movement that you're hoping to launch, and also where we are with the Kauhale.
That's going great. So when I put up a T-shirt that says YIMBY, which really means yes in my backyard, I'm speaking literally. We just built a Kauhale in 7 weeks. Incredible props to Nani and James and their whole teams, the folks over at Homemade and Project Vision. I mean, it's amazing. Brooke and I started this journey a couple years ago when we had a very small staff, and it took us almost 2 years to build a Kauhale. Now we're doing it in less than 2 months. It's important. This one's called Pulama Ola, which is about healing. It's medical respite. It's right across from Queens Hospital, right next to the governor's residence. And I think we had to demonstrate that we're going to care for people that are struggling, that are on the street, that have just been out of, in bad health and out on the curb. So we're doing it. And then we will move to other Kauhale here in town. I don't think it's reasonable to think we'll do them again in 7 weeks, but they'll be somewhat larger. They'll be permanent housing for people. Middle Street is our next target amongst others. And we have somewhere between 12 and 25 sites that we'd like to use in time. And I can tell you there's a Kauhale we're envisioning now for Big Island that would be a Kauhale where people are recovering from addiction and going through that part of their lives. That is really high on my list of something to do. We already started one in the Kona side. Everyone seems to want to do this now because we're doing it very efficiently. The price point is low. It's incredible. It's well under $20,000 per tiny home. And then we provide wraparound services so people don't end up in the hospital again or out in the street again. The costs of homelessness will plummet when we do this well. And at the same time, we're partnering with the mayor's team and working out some details about their respite facilities, expanding the H4 capacity, providing mental health care respite over in Iwalei. All these things are creating a system so that as we move people from the street or from a park or from the beach, if they've got schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or have had an addiction problem or simply homeless because of economics, now we will have somewhere for them to go. And so I urge everyone to understand that by having several sites, it decreases the concentration of a camp or a part of the homeless community in their particular neighborhood, and it provides an enhanced ability to get people back on their feet. So this is going to be successful here. It's going to also be, I think, noted, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, nationally as something to do in some of the other cities around the country. So I'm really proud of our team. Expect me to even do medical rounds at the Health Kauhale here right next to my house, do some wound care. Just want to see that people are doing well. And we have had great support. I would be remiss if I didn't say from Queens, from HMSA, from I think it's First Hawaiian, just lots of great support. Chad Buck has helped us. Just so many people have stepped up. It's really incredible. So we're seeing both humanitarian support, philanthropic support, and a very modest amount of government expenditure to get this done. So this is going to be a highlight, I think. I'm pretty hopeful.
And while there has been a lot of people who've obviously rallied around this particular site, the question then becomes, as you look to expand and into these other communities, the reaction that you're going to get. Obviously, there are going to be people, those individuals and communities who don't want this in their backyard. How do you find that balance between that community voice and maybe any opposition that you may have while also trying to sell this as something that should be in these other communities?
You bet. Well, there's a lot of ways to look at that concern. First of all, we're going to be pretty careful to put the Kauhale in places where people are already congregating, but are, to the best of our ability, away from residential areas. Okay, that's one thing. So we're mindful of that. We take a lot of input. Second, people trusted me to make good decisions for the state. That's honestly what elections are about. And they trusted me to take on this big issue like I took on COVID, which was effective for us. And so it does take some trust, honestly. The trust piece, though, is about harm reduction. There will be fewer individuals that are likely to cause harm to themselves or to others when we provide these services and care. It's about investment. It's about putting the right teams in the right places. But overall, people will be safer because there aren't individuals, say, taking over a park, or they'll be safer because someone perhaps isn't doing drugs on the street or near a school. So that's the reason that I think people will ultimately embrace this. Also, it wouldn't really be very genuine of us to speak about aloha and ohana if we didn't care for those who are struggling the most. It's just not right. So I believe in everyone's heart in Hawaii that they want to help people and they want to decrease the suffering that goes on. These are the people that are suffering. So I hope people will embrace this. And honestly, if we don't get it right or perfect, we will always be flexible and listen. And that means that we are going to be capable of setting up one Kauhale, looking to another site. If the first site has to be adjusted or amended, we will do that for the good of all. But we do have to care for people who are really struggling.
Sorry about that. Let's talk a little bit about Aloha Stadium. Big news coming out yesterday about the plan now to go with a single developer for the site, entertainment, and the housing piece. Tell us a little bit about how you came to that decision. And for viewers who are not familiar, we encourage you to head over to the Honolulu Star-Advertiser after this conversation. There's a great write-up explaining how this is going to work. But tell us a little bit about your thinking into why this is the best path forward.
So I can be very clear. We did a deep dive into what it would look like from a cost standpoint. So the previous proposal over the last few years had proposed what was called a DBFM, or a design, build, finance, and maintain proposal. And that put the finance ultimately on the backs of the people of the state of Hawaii, because some partner would finance it at a rate, an interest rate that we would have to cover. There was a term called availability costs, and that would have cost us an additional $450 million. I didn't want to expose our taxpayers to that $450 million cost. So what we did was we simplified the process. We will be in partnership with the developer. We'll put out a request for proposal in the coming months. There will be a lot of interested parties, in my opinion, because they will have up to $400 million to build a stadium, and they'll have the rights to develop on the same request for proposal. They'll have the rights to develop housing and the entertainment district around the stadium. A lot of special things have been done across the country where you bring revenue and interest and excitement around a stadium. I've asked that it be at least 25,000 seats, and also they'll get the opportunity to have naming rights applied to the stadium, and that should bring in another $30 to $40 million. I also think that when you do something like this and you give opportunity to build housing, of course there will be revenues that they get from renting housing and building and developing the acres there. That's going to be an incentive to really build a terrific stadium. And so what I think you will get is a special stadium for the state of Hawaii. It will be great for our football team. It will be great for our high school teams that will get to play there. I hope and expect we will attract international sports like rugby. I would really like to see a lot of great concerts. I just think it's good for the state. So I wanted to decrease our exposure and risk. We had a lot of exposure when we did the larger project of rail. It started, toward $5 billion and ended up at $10 billion. And I didn't want that to happen. I commend the legislative leadership for coming around to this plan. They gave me a lot of advice as we kind of came to the end of the session. But I had to wait till the end of the session to see, number one, how much money I had. Two, to make sure I made a decision that didn't give us big overruns. And really, three, that we could simplify it and do it as one proposal. We should still be ready for the 2028 season. I will do all that I can to make it happen sooner, but I do want to give people realistic expectations.
Yeah, and just on that note, obviously the University of Hawaii is going to be a major part of this stadium and would like to see this done and stick to that 2028 timeline. How confident are you in that and the conversations that maybe you're having with the athletic department about how they plan and move forward? Of course, they have a new athletic director. So a side question, have you had any conversations with the new leader of the department as well?
I haven't. We've been introduced just through emails and text messages. What we did also do, and I should make this very clear, we did create a consortium. So a partnership between the DBED team, the Stadium Authority, and the university, plus a few others, will be a part of this. We'll have a team of executives that run the project. And then, of course, we'll have the development team. So it's a consortium model. The university, honestly, did not really want to build a giant stadium and have to take full responsibility for that. That was a lot of lift for them while they're trying to educate people. I'm just being very blunt. So a consortium was necessary. And I think that's it's fair for them to say that. I don't think that ultimately their heart was in becoming a developer. They want to build housing for their faculty and their students. They want to build additions to the campus. They would like to build, I think, a studio for film. All these things are central to their purpose, but building a full stadium that's going to be used not just for football, because football is only going to be 8 days of the year, probably. The other 357 days are going to be utilized by those who run the stadium.
I like that. I could see you doing the math there in your head. I want to bring in this question here from Matt Popovich, who says, given the new NASED plan, how many units of housing is the target number, and what's the timeline for building that housing? We know housing is a priority of this project. It's a priority of yours. So we're looking at 25,000 seat minimum on the stadium itself. But what about the housing units?
I'd like to see 4,000 units as was proposed before. And they should be a mix of affordable, mostly affordable, frankly, and some luxury. Also, I will not be surprised at all if they move toward, if they move toward, also a hotel there. And there's just a lot that can be done. I'm also in broader discussions with the military. We're quite near a lot of their space. There's a lot of potential for partnership here. And we're going to need to put monies in for infrastructure. I want to thank the Senate leadership. They were supportive with infrastructure, and the House leadership was very thoughtful in keeping this total cost reasonable. So lots of people contributed to a good plan here. But that question was the right one. And we do always have to be mindful of our housing needs, because we are about 50,000 units short statewide. You'll see a lot of housing start going up, though, because we're cutting a lot of red tape. We'll have an emergency proclamation on housing sometime in early June. That's probably going to create quite a lot of interest because, frankly, people want housing, but they want us to do it right.
We only have a few minutes left, but this is a topic that you briefly touched on earlier in our conversation. That is Red Hill. Just a quick update on that. If you can give us, you mentioned sort of this timeline of where we're at here. Can you give us an update on Red Hill and where things stand?
Yes, it appears that show of strength that included leadership from the city and county, our team, the speaker, the Senate president, all the legislators, and the council members was impactful. So shortly after, we all came together and simply declared that we were going to be united in the draining of Red Hill. The military took that to heart, and now the timeline has moved way up. So we expect that to begin, I believe, in October. And hopefully the draining of Red Hill will be done in January of 2024. We want them to do it carefully. We can't afford spills, but it's a very good thing. And then we can begin to shut down the facility for good. Again, the environmental community was great. They spoke up proudly on behalf of our needs for environmental protection. Really, this is about our children and clean drinking water and not having exposure to any of these hydrocarbons. So it was a great show of solidarity, which led to moving up the timetable.
We always have so much to talk to you about, and you did put one little nugget in there that I want to follow up on, and that is as an emergency proclamation on housing. What is going to be in that proclamation? What kind of a preview can you give us on that?
So we're going to cut red tape and redundancy that goes on in the construction areas between the county and the state. We're going to be very mindful, like we did with the emergency proclamation for homelessness, that we don't go around environmental rules. We have a lot of units that have already been essentially green-lighted in the past, but got held up for small, unnecessary conflicts. And people simply need housing too much, because until we get housing, we're not going to have nurses. Until we get more housing, we're going to still be 1,200 teachers short. I mean, we negotiate a new teacher's contract. It will be better pay. But you can only do so much when housing costs this much for our people. So housing has to be a priority. It is an emergency. So expect that to really, really cut down the red tape, especially along the rail. So the TOD, the transient-oriented development, is going to be an area of focus for us to expedite the building of housing. And, this is all a part of the larger restructuring of government and this era of Juliao, as we described, Jamie and I, when we came into office. You're seeing budgetary priorities that are consistent with what everyone said. You saw us handle education quickly, homelessness fast, housing's big lift. But I'm going to do some other big things. Expect in the coming weeks major changes to the Board of Regents. I'm going to do something somewhat, provocative. but meant to change things a little bit, meant to light a fire under us to really bring extra attention to the capacity of our university. They do great things. I want to give them a boost. So expect a super boost on Tuesday. You're going to see Board of Education leaders that are going to come in. So we'll have some changes there, and the HTA also. So we're going to put our stamp on progress, but we're taking action. And everybody I put in is a very active person. And I will tell you that the initials of one of the people going in is NA.
I don't think it's difficult to figure out who that will be, but as always, Governor Green, very delightful to talk to you with all these teases that you give us and keep us wanting and really paying attention to see what happens in the coming weeks. So we look forward to some of those announcements that are going to be coming out. And again, we appreciate your time and just giving us insights into what's happening there in your office. So thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you. Mahalo. Wow, Ryan, you were right. I mean, so many things. I think we could have kept going for another half an hour because he kept giving us little teasers of what's ahead. A super boost on Tuesday for the Board of Regents. We're looking at new board members for the HTA. And then, of course, talking about how he is going to be spending that $200 million. Of course, it's been well documented that he is giving quite a bit of that money to the Hawaii Tourism Authority to fund some of those contracts that were put out before, and then putting money, he said, into education to kind of make up for some of the deficits that lawmakers were not happy about. He also said that he will be putting money into the university. We don't know how much, but he said he's going to come back on here and walk us through a spreadsheet. So we're going to try to talk to his comms team and hold him to it, because I would love to go over his thinking on those allocations. And because he is able to do that with that $200 million, he says that a special session is likely not necessary.
Yeah, you could hear it when we asked him that question directly, if he thought that was necessary. He feels very confident in his administration and the team that he has put in place to sort of fix some of the things that were not able to happen during the legislative session, but also noting that he continues to stay in touch with the leadership to ensure that they are aware of some of the things that will be happening. He does have a veto list that he will be beginning to put together, some things that one of the things that he did mention was something that may have limited executive power. So that was one thing that he did give us insights into, but that will be the next step for this administration to see just how many things the governor maybe does not agree with the way things were handled with the legislative session, and what vetoes he intends to put on that intent to veto list and begin those conversations about what actually gets cut out. But a lot of things in that veto list could include just fixing some of the chaos that happened at the end of session that has been widely publicized and talked about. Oftentimes in those final moments, numbers could be fudged a little. Language within just legal language within bills may also need fixing and correcting. And so we'll see what happens with that intent to veto list and how much of those clerical errors may also be impacting his decision moving forward. We heard more about Aloha Stadium and his plans there, and just really his confidence in moving this project forward to see that it is done by 2028.
Yeah, it was a really news-packed conversation right off the top. If you missed any of that, go back and watch when we're done with this live stream, because he also talked about how he's basically having to cut $1 billion over the next 2 years to make up for some of the Council on Revenue's projections that lawmakers didn't have at the time that they made that budget. They had allocated $1 billion to add to the rainy day fund, which already has $1 billion. He says that he thinks it's more appropriate to fund that to $1.5 billion instead of the $2 billion. So he's cutting a $500 million from that allocation and then going through line item vetoes on certain areas that he just thinks are not shovel ready. He says to basically cut $1 billion out. That is a pretty major announcement that he made. And just looking at, I'm sure there'll be a lot of lawmakers who are now very interested to see what projects he's going to be cutting out.
Yeah, and we heard from him at the end there, just really saying he wants to shake up government and he wants to move fast, touting some of his accomplishments already in these first 6 months, but also noting that he's looking for individuals and people to put in some of these positions, because as governor, he does have that right to appoint some of these members to these boards that play a significant role in various sectors of our community, which include the University of Hawaii Regents Board that he's going to have to name. He didn't say who that person will be, and I don't want to go on here and speculate. He did say the initials are NA. There was a governor that had those initials in the past that we know is a finalist. So we'll see how things pan out here as Governor Green continues to move forward through his first year in office.
Yeah, and he also did come with props. You saw that YIMBY shirt that he brought. That means yes in my backyard. Really, the Kauhale concept is one of his signature I would say actions that he's taken. That medical Kauhale is going out for blessing, and we should see people actually getting to start to use those small facilities. And if you drive by, you see they have brightly painted doors there, very visible right across the street from Queens Medical Center, and of course, right next to the governor's own residence. So he says that he's saying yes in his backyard, and he would like the community to say yes in their backyards as well. Middle Street being the next site that they are immediately working on, and we can see a lot more of them. They're hoping for about 24 over the next few years throughout the state, and he did mention some on Hawaii Island as well. So always so much to talk about with the governor. One thing we didn't get to ask him is whether or not he will be riding the rail route when it opens. We are going to be talking to Lori Kahikina on Wednesday. Rail about a month away from opening. June 30th is the day that Mayor Rick Blangiardi says the trains will be leaving the station. We've got a lot of questions for Lori Kahikina. We bet you do too. So join us right back here on Wednesday. We are taking Monday off to mark Memorial Day, and we hope that you and your families have a blessed day on Monday.
Have a great weekend. Aloha.